Anthony Brittan is only the third person in 100 years to attempt the buried alive escape, but failed just over a week ago.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 10 terrifying real stories of being buried alive.
It's not the kind of place you'd expect a happy ending, and yet that's exactly what's coming our way, and as you can imagine, it's a rather strange and unexpected one as well.
For this list, we'll be considering the most shocking and horrifying instances of people who were buried alive but miraculously survived. Do you know anyone who's had a similar near-death experience? Share your tale with us in the comments. Unnamed Chinese pensioner. In 2018, the Chinese province of Sichuan was subjected to weeks of prolonged heavy rainfall. As a result, more than 200,000 residents suffered severe consequences, with their homes and farmlands being damaged by the floods. During that period, an unidentified 64-year-old man was reportedly walking down a highway when a landslide collapsed the road beneath him and completely buried him. Over the next 5 hours, the man remained trapped underneath the mud while rescuers worked tirelessly to free him. Fortunately, they were able to get him out from under nearly 20,000 cubic meters of mud with only minor injuries sustained. Sao Paulo Man resurrects. While visiting the resting place of her relatives at a cemetery in Ferraz de Vasconcelos, Sao Paulo, a Brazilian woman made a shocking discovery. According to reports, the woman heard noises coming from a nearby grave and noticed a man trying to make his way out. Naturally, she ran away terrified. But after drawing the attention of the cemetery workers, they found out that the man wasn't actually a zombie.
The terrified woman noted authorities who helped to unbury the rest of the man's body and brought him to a hospital.
In fact, he had reportedly been the victim of an attack in another part of town. His assailants, who probably thought he was dead, then brought him to the cemetery and buried him in a shallow grave. Luckily, he was discovered by the grieving woman. Youssef Guze. Throughout history, there have been several instances of people being mistaken for dead and buried alive. That was nearly the case for Jozef Guzy, a 76-year-old beekeeper from Katowice, Poland. While at work, Guzy was stung by a bee and suffered a heart attack as a result. He was later pronounced dead by a doctor. Guzy was taken to a mortuary afterwards and placed in a coffin to be buried. Things might have gone terribly awry if his wife didn't make a last-minute request to retrieve some jewelry that he was wearing. Upon reaching into his coffin, the funeral director detected a pulse. Guzy was taken out and rushed to the ICU. Marjorie McCall. Known as the woman who lived once but was buried twice, Marjorie McCall resided in the Irish town of Lurgan, County Armagh, in the 17th century. McCall apparently suffered a fever in 1695 and was soon pronounced dead. On the day of her burial, her body was dressed up and interred at Shankhill Graveyard. One night, her coffin was visited by grave robbers who dug her up to steal her valuable jewelry. While doing so, McCall suddenly awoke, scaring off her would-be robbers. She made her way out of the grave and walked back home, where, upon seeing her husband collapsed out of shock. McCall reportedly lived to have another child before passing on later in life. Sifo William Maleche. Back in 1993, 24-year-old South African Sifo William Maleche was involved in a ghastly car accident with his fiancée. While his fiancée survived, Maleche sustained injuries that were considered fatal by the first responders who arrived at the scene. As a result, he was immediately transported to the morgue. After enduring 48 hours trapped inside a cold metal cabinet of the morgue, Maleche miraculously regained consciousness. Probably thinking the worst, the young man began screaming for help and hitting the enclosure. He was eventually rescued by the mortuary workers and taken home to his fiancée, who was reportedly petrified to see him at first. Natalia Pasternak. It's one thing to get through being buried alive, but to have to survive a bear attack on top of that is nothing short of a miracle. That was the tale of Natalia Pasternak, a Russian post office worker who had gone to the woods with her friend to collect birch sap. While there, the ladies were ambushed by a bear who attacked Pasternak, leaving her in a terrible condition.
Wildlife officials say the 55-year-old woman was found conscious, but severely injured after the attack. She was conscious. Her first question was if the bear had been killed or not.
The bear then buried her underneath some foliage, apparently saving her for his next meal. Pasternak's friend was able to contact the authorities, who returned to the scene and put down the creature.
One should be careful and attentive. It is spring now, and the bears came out of their dens a month ago. They are hungry.
She was then rescued and taken to the hospital. Jung Soo On. On October 16, 2022, 42-year-old Jung Soo On was physically assaulted by her estranged husband Che and buried alive. At the time of the incident, the couple had been working through a bitter divorce, and On had earlier filed a domestic violence protective order against Che.
She told investigators that she went over on Sunday to do some laundry when they started talking about divorce and money, and things got heated.
During a heated argument on that day, Che attacked On, then bound and gagged her with duct tape before driving her out into the woods, where he buried her alive in a shallow grave.
And drove her to a remote area where he buried her alive.
On managed to escape from the grave after several hours and turned up at a stranger's house very early the next morning. Che was arrested that same day and brought up on multiple charges, including attempted murder and kidnapping.
She's asked that I address the court on her behalf. These are her words. Please, no bail. I am really afraid for my life. I just want to emphasize that I fear him so much, and he will kill me again if he is out.
Angelo Hays. One of the most famous cases of premature burial is that of Angelo Hays from France. In 1937, Hays was riding his motorcycle when he got into a terrible accident that left him with severe head injuries.
He was riding a motorcycle, no helmet, and hit a wall with blunt trauma to the head. That's what probably killed him.
He was pronounced dead a few days later and promptly buried. However, as his father had taken out a sizable life insurance policy on him, a claims adjuster was sent to investigate the cause of death.
So here's where they found the bike. There's the curve in the road where he lost it.
And not a single skid mark.
2 days after the burial, Hayes' body was exhumed and he was discovered to still be alive. He eventually made a full recovery and gained some popularity in France after inventing his own electric coffin.
After he healed, Angelo went on to create a special coffin with a radio transmitter in it that allowed anyone else that was unlucky enough to be buried alive to call for help.
Anthony Brittan. Ever since the legendary Harry Houdini first attempted the buried alive escape in 1915, a few other performers have tried and failed to outdo him.
Houdini was the first to attempt the buried alive stunt in 1915. Though his hand reportedly broke the surface, he almost died when he became exhausted and panicked trying to dig his way out.
One of these was the British daredevil Anthony Brittan. In 2015, with his sights set on besting Houdini, Brittan laid in a standard-sized grave and was buried under 6 feet of soil. However, after about 9 minutes had passed and Brittan hadn't resurfaced, his crew knew that something was wrong.
My right arm actually got trapped between the soil and my body. And at that point, that's when I started losing consciousness.
According to the escape artist, he could feel himself being crushed under the soil and even sustained a cracked rib in the process. He was eventually pulled out and resuscitated by paramedics.
You got out, which is great. Your team got you out.
My team was absolutely fantastic.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Essie Dunbar. In 1915, at the age of 30, Essie Dunbar of South Carolina suffered an epileptic seizure and was thought to have passed away. As her sister lived in the neighboring town, Dunbar's funeral was slated for the next morning to give her time to travel down. Nonetheless, she arrived late for the ceremony to find that her sister had already been buried. At her behest, Dunbar's coffin was dug up so she could pay her last respects. To the utter shock of everyone present, once the lid was removed, Dunbar reportedly sat up in the coffin, alive and well. She went on to live for another 47 years before she eventually died, this time for real in 1962.